Good morning, this is Llanos. I'm the managing broker of 24-hour real estate. We live crazy and weird times right now, and there's a lot of questions. Today we're going to focus in a few basic questions about evictions and about what happened with tenants, what happened with landlords, what happened with law and order in the city when everything is going crazy. Okay, I have a lot of questions from the subscribers and comments in my social media. Many people are asking, will all the tenants stop paying? Will tenants need to pay back, ever pay back? I mean, what happened with the courts? They're closed. So what's going to happen with law and order? You know, how people are going to get foreclosed, or what's going to happen? So what I usually do, and I think everybody should do in times like this, is call a specialist. And in this case, my attorney, Felix Gonzalez, he's an specialist in all of these matters. I'm very thankful that he's here, and I want to introduce him. He does law in real estate. He works in Archer Law Group. It's a firm in the south side of Chicago. And I'm gonna let him to do the introduction himself.
Well, thank you for having me this morning, and thank you all for listening. We're here to provide some information for people who might be a little bit nervous, a little bit anxious about the economic times that we've got. On the landlord side, I'm going to give some advice to help you work with your tenants through these difficult times, and to provide also some of the tenants some information about how they can go about making sure that they can continue to have security in the rental situations. I've been practicing for about 20 years now. A significant portion of our practice does involve evictions and dealing with eviction related issues, mostly on the landlord side, but this information will apply to both parties. So thank you for having me.
Great. So big questions that I have, because I saw them over and over again. What's going to happen? Will all the tenants will stop paying? If I'm a landlord, am I going to get paid at all? Or what are the limits? What is your take on that?
Well, it's a great question, and the answer is, as all lawyers will tell you, is it depends. So different landlords have different situations with their tenants. So for example, if you're a landlord and you have Section 8 tenants, those tenants will continue to have their payments coming in because they're funded by the government. Sometimes tenants also have a portion of that rent that they pay. If they've been laid off because they're in one of the non-essential industries that are affected by the Pritzker order that went into effect last week, they're going to be out of work until about the 7th of April. And so they may have to be dipping into savings and everything else in the meantime. So you may have a portion of rents that is the tenant portion that's not being paid, but if you're Section 8, you will continue to get those payments. If you have a tenant that is completely out of work, let's say a bartender, someone in the service industry, then that person, if they don't have any savings, if they don't have any money, you may have a difficulty collecting rent beginning on April 1st. And so what I've recommended to all of my landlords is to be proactive. Go out there, have a conversation with your tenant and say, what is your situation and how can I help? This is a time where landlords and tenants are going to need to work together. The fundamentals of our economy are very strong, but for the meantime, people literally just cannot go to work. So what we're going to have to make sure that we do is pull together as a team to make sure that the tenants know what their rights and obligations are, and same for the landlords as well. But people have a legal obligation to continue to make their mortgage payments if they can do so. And if they are going to have difficulty, to communicate that they're going to have difficulty with the landlord so that a mutually acceptable relationship and process of moving forward can be accomplished.
Yeah, I think communication, the point of communication is very important. Be proactive. So you have two sides of the coin. You have the tenant side and the landlord side, right? So from a tenant perspective, you need to pay your rent payment. From the landlord perspective, you need to pay, most of the cases, the mortgage payment. So there are some Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac is providing some breaks, some facilities, but it's a matter of you being, again, proactive. Give a call to your lender and explain the situation that is going on personally, and try to figure out a solution. You know, in times like this, we need to work together, like Felix mentioned, and but we need to communicate from a tenant perspective. Be proactive. Reach out to the tenant. Are you having a hard time? What's going on with you? And because this is going to finish, so that takes me to the second question. After all of this hopefully happens, either in 2 or 3 weeks, or in 2 or 3 months, or in whatever time, will tenants need to ever pay back, or is just going to be forgiveness forever? That's the question.
Yeah, so that's a common thing that I hear a lot of times. So a tenant sometimes will call me up and say, well, hey, my landlord is in foreclosure, or my landlord has a situation going on. Do I continue to have an obligation to make those payments? And the answer is yes. You know, you have to pay your rent. That's just as black and white as it comes. Now, with the current situation that we've got, and the particular question of if the tenant can't pay rent in April, for example, and they go back to work at the end of April, what happens come May? Well, the answer is have a conversation with your landlord to work out a way to get caught back up with that rent. There is no way that someone can live in a unit and not pay their rent. So yes, they will have to have an obligation. That rent will continue to accrue. It will be a late rent, and the landlord can serve a notification, a 5-day notice in Illinois, that the rent is due and has to be paid within a 5-day period of time. Now, what I've always suggested to landlords is that you make sure that you maybe perhaps divide that rent over a period of time. So for example, if your rent is $1,000 and you weren't able to make your April payment, maybe over the course of a few months, add to the rent as they go back to work so that that can be paid back in as quick a period of time as possible. Now we understand that that might be difficult, but that's the obligation that tenants have to the landlords. And of course, the landlord, if they want to keep the tenant, wants to be as flexible as humanly possible.
Yeah, let's keep something that I talk to my clients is I said, this is temporary. And you need to make sure not to overreact to this situation, because the situation is temporary. And I also say to landlords, because with clients that are landlords, we have clients that are tenants. But what you don't want to do is stop paying now and have a huge burden by the end of 2-3 months. Then at that moment, you know, we're gonna get back to our common law and everything. Evictions are gonna go back to normal, and you don't wanna be broke at that time. You don't wanna, you know, procrastinate in this situation, believing that somehow this thing is just gonna go away, and you're gonna be able to get away with you know, with your own responsibilities, you know? So I think it's a very mature thing to talk to landlords, tenants, but understand that everybody has expenses and work together. You know, I think that's very important.
Yeah, and if I could just add something to that, any tenant who thinks that they don't have to pay rent because they heard something in the news, they really should go and seek legal counsel so that they can be properly informed about what their rights and their obligations are. Because at the end of the day, these are private contracts between tenants and landlords, and the government really can't step in and say, well, tenant, you don't have any obligation to pay. Sorry, landlord, you just have to bear the burden on that. That's not the way that this works. So the tenant will have to pay. And I want folks to think, not only have tenants suffered perhaps not earning income, but if the landlord does move to evict, now you're going to have a judgment of a money damages against you, and that's just going to make it a lot harder to find a new place in the future.
Again, we can work together with compassion, you know. I guess, but we need to be able that this temporary situation don't become permanent in many ways. So we need to move forward from a health perspective, but also from a financial perspective, and that's the purpose of the channel and the reason that we try to give the best advice we can. The third thing is many landlords, because you know, when you enter into panic mode, you start looking maybe too much to the worst case scenarios, you know. So people tell me, Herman, will the real estate market be destroyed by the virus? You know, what's going to happen since tenants, they don't need to technically pay anymore, which already covered that. But just before jump to Felix's take on this, is that, again, we need to gain perspective. This is not the first time that the United States or the world go through a crisis. You know, I don't think this is the last virus or the last pandemic that we were going to have. And if we're gonna be shutting down for years economies and destroying everything that our forefathers and generations worked for, I think that's gonna be the greatest failure of this country forever. So we need to understand what it is. We need to take precautions, and maybe next time we're better prepared. Okay, but my take is that this will not destroy the real estate market. We're going to come back, and we're going to come back stronger. What is your take on this?
I agree with that 100%. So we're just in a period of time right now where, because of government order, people can't go to work. Once those restrictions are eased, and then they're going to be ultimately lifted, there's still demand in the economy. People still want to work. There's something wonderful about being able to go out there, earn an income, and provide for your family. And people, to be honest, they've been at home with their family for the last few weeks. They're dying to get back into the workforce. So those fundamentals are going to be there. The demand is going to be there. The economy is going to recover. From what I'm seeing, it looks like it's going to recover pretty quickly. The government has come in to provide every funding facility that's available to make sure that we have a soft landing and a very strong bounce back into the real normal. And because of that, I know that a lot of people are looking at their checking accounts and saying, I burned through some of my savings. I'm very nervous. I'm very concerned. And that's very normal and it's very human. But just make sure that you don't take a situation that's difficult and make bad decisions and make it into a horrible situation. One of those will be ignore my landlord. I'm not going to return any phone calls, because now your landlord is going to say, well, I'm calling my tenant to try to be proactive, and now my tenant's not returning my call. What do I do? That's going to make a situation that's difficult, push it into worse. But on the fundamental question, the market is not going to be destroyed. People still need to move. People still need to rent. The fundamentals are still there, and I think long-term will be okay.
Great. And then something that I would like you to explain for our audience is, if you can please let us know, when Chicago, let's say we have a ban on evictions or certain ordinances, do those laws and regulations and ordinances also apply to the suburbs of Chicago? How is the legal structure between cities and municipalities?
Okay, so here's the way that this works. All of the laws that we had on the books still are in effect, and they still are in force. The only challenge that we have right now is that due to the number of people who use the Cook County court system on a daily basis, a lot of people are coming in, a lot of people are coming out. What the courts did a couple of weeks ago was they closed the court system for a period of 30 days. I've been practicing for 20 years, and maybe there's been a snow day here and a snow day there. I have never seen the courthouse literally closed for all business other than like emergency criminal matters and preliminary hearings for a month period of time. April 15th is the day where the courts are tentatively scheduled to open back up, which means that after that period of time, you can get your cases heard, filed, and everything else. Currently, all of my cases that I had in March and in April are now receiving May court dates. So that's going to be the first thing. Because the courthouse is closed, the enforcement mechanism of enforcing evictions has been put on pause. So for example, the Thursday before they closed the courts last week, I got a judgment for eviction. Normally, within 7 days, I could take that to the sheriff's office, and then the sheriff would begin enforcement, which is going to the house and removing the tenant. That's on hold now, and that's going to be on hold until the 15th of April. Because it's Cook County encompasses the city of Chicago proper, the northern suburbs, and also the southern suburbs. So it's all of Cook County. The 5 courthouses that we have are going to be closed in the meantime.
So do you think that after, you said April 14 or
April 15?
April 15, do you think how is going to be the process, assuming that that's the date, how do you think it's going to normalize the process? Are the cases going to be slower? How do you foresee that situation coming back to normal?
Well, what is going to end up happening is that typically on an eviction court call, you might have, let's say, 30 cases. You're going to start seeing 45 to 50 cases over on a court call. The judges are going to really push through those to try to make sure that all of remember, the court is there to help parties mediate a dispute. And so they recognize that there's going to be a need to immediately address all of these issues, because the longer that the court takes to address the issues, the more tensions there's going to be in society, and some people obviously don't react well to all those stresses and pressures. So the courthouse is going to be very busy once we come back. There's going to be a lot of cases, I'm sure, that are going to be filed, and the courthouse and the court system and the sheriff, who has to do all the service of process to notify tenants of the cases and then to enforce the evictions. They're going to be very, very busy, but we'll get through it. In the past, what I've generally seen is within about 45 days, things will probably return back to the normal pace of cases filed and the normal cases of things being motioned and the evictions being enforced. That's what I would predict.
Great. Well, those are the 5 questions that we want to bring to your attention. And if you have any other questions, if you have anything, where can people reach out to you? How can people communicate with you?
They can call me at the office. The office is the Archer Law Group. We're located on Archer Avenue, Chicago. I can be reached at 312-602-9553 at the office, or you can email me with any questions at Felix, Felix, at lawontarget.com.
Again, this is Germán Llanos, managing broker of 24 Hour Real Estate here in the Ukrainian village. We're always ready to help. We're still working. We're never going to stop. This virus, this bicho, like we say in Spanish, will not stop us, will not stop America. The resilience of the American people is amazing. This is the best country of the world. That's why many immigrants like us, we came here. We wish you the best for your family. Take all the safety measurements that you need to take. And like always, let's keep moving forward. We're going to move forward slow for a few weeks, for a few months, whatever it takes. And then we will go back. Thank you so much for watching. And we'll see you soon.